Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. Get ready for an exciting conversation today with Alice Huang, a dynamic fractional COO and expert connector who thrives at the intersection of AI, Web3, real estate, and networking, building networks in this day and age. Alice is a really curious, lifelong learner. She's passionate about building meaningful connections with people and driving growth for businesses. Her diverse experiences include being a martial artist, a world traveler, and a podcast connoisseur. We're really excited to have you on today, Alice. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Blendi, and thank you so much for catching up again. Great to see you.
Awesome. So for the viewers that don't know, we met at the All In Summit, 2 months ago, and we really hit it off. We met at this really great place where there were a lot of like-minded people in business, politics, folks that are in Silicon Valley, the tech space. And what I noticed immediately about you is your vibrant personality and that you attract people to like-minded people to each other. I remember we were online and you were talking to one person and you got me into the conversation, and by the end of the conversation there were 3 or 4 people in talking about everything from the All In podcast to tech to politics. So right off the bat, you seem like a great networker, and I want people to understand your origin story. What brought us to this point? Who is Alice Huang? And then I want to dive into some questions about networking, about building communities with you.
Sure, let's do this. Where do we even start? I grew up in Vancouver, BC, and I left in my early 20s. And then I never actually thought I would ever leave my hometown of Vancouver. And when I did, my life completely changed. So since growing up in Vancouver, I've actually lived in 8 countries across 4 continents and 9 cities. So it's very natural to me to actually have that desire to make sure that people feel seen, heard, and appreciated. So for me, it's very natural to want to see somebody who's sitting there by themselves and just invite them into my group. It's always been like that. So I don't even know how it all started, but it's gotten even on a bigger scale since I moved to Austin in February. So I've built quite a few different communities here in Austin, despite being fairly new here to Austin.
Yeah.
So I run the monthly All In meetups here in Austin, as well as the My First Million meetup, as well as the Modern Wisdom meetup with Chris Williamson. So it's been great.
That's fantastic. And it's such a Austin has become such a hub for entrepreneurs, for startup founders, for people that are they're trying to make their life better. If there's anything that I've realized is large urban centers, they attract people that are very much like-minded, motivated, driven for success. And what's interesting about what you're saying, you're connecting all of these different fans of a similar mindset. All of the people that watch the podcast you're referring to, they're all trying to better themselves, whether it's through their careers, whether it's through their companies. And what better way to do that than getting people together in a city and just following the podcast that they love to watch?
Absolutely. And the really interesting thing is that a lot of the attendees actually don't listen to all of the podcasts, but they know they'll find like-minded friends, people who are curious, people who are very entrepreneurial, and people who are very open-minded. So that's one of the key reasons they all come to those meetups.
What is your now there are people that they have these meetups, community building, there's a why to it. Why? Is it more so just building the community for the sake of having the community? Is it building the community because, those relationships may lead down the road to career opportunities, to investment opportunities? What is the thing that has led you to do this community building?
That's a great question. So prior to moving to Austin in February, I was in Montreal for 4 years. And the All-In meetup, the All-In Summit that we met at was actually the second All-In Summit that I've been to. So I also went to the All-In Summit last year while I was still living in Montreal. So I met another fellow Montrealer, Sam, and when we went back to Montreal, we tried to establish an All-In community in Montreal. It took us 4 months and we got 3 members, Sam, myself, and Shelly. So it took 4 months. And at that point, I knew that I need to surround myself with people who inspire me and friends who can actually help one another. I don't know if you've heard of the saying that if you look around, people around you, if you don't feel inspired, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. So that's when I realized that, hey, maybe I'll go to Montreal. Maybe I should move somewhere else. So that's why it took me to here in Austin. And as soon as I got to Austin, I realized that I must surround myself with like-minded friends. So that was the key reason that inspired me to actually build these communities. So yeah, I started guerrilla marketing. I even printed out a lot of posters to post them all around Austin. I went to a lot of different events with my flyers to invite people who I think would be like-minded to join these meetups. So it was a lot of guerrilla marketing. So much so the podcast host, Sam Parr from My First Million, saw my poster on the east side of Austin. And actually, maybe 2 weeks ago, someone else tracked me down on Twitter and started DMing me saying, hey, I saw your poster on the east side of Austin. Can I join this community? And things like that, just extremely rewarding for me.
So, well, you mentioned Twitter, which is interesting. There's this phenomenon that has occurred over the last 2 years of communities really living and breathing online strictly. And what I'm noticing is there is this desire, especially post-COVID, of uh, people wanting to escape the confines of their Twitter feed or their Instagram feed or LinkedIn and actually meet people, talk to people in person. Um, what has the reception been like as you're trying to develop these meetups, plan them, schedule them, and execute on them? Have people been receptive to kind of leaving the online space and meeting in an IRL or in real life?
Very much so. It's funny you say that because during COVID, I was very deeply involved with the Web3 community. So we were very much globally connected across different time zones. And as soon as the restrictions in Montreal eased up, I started planning monthly events for members to actually meet up in person. So those events are often sold out. So even our first partnership with Notman House, which was a local incubator, I remember we had initially allocated 40 tickets for attendees. We had to up that limit to 60. We had to up the limit multiple times in the increments of 5. It was just, the reception's always been incredible for any in real life connections. I think nothing beats face to face.
If I'm also applying this to a business vertical like sales marketing, if I told you, you would probably not be surprised if I told you that the return on investment of an in real life conference is significantly higher when it comes to closing rate to just traditional online advertising, like cold advertising online on Facebook, LinkedIn, and whatnot. Why is that? Why is it that people just, is it the trust factor? Is it being able to read someone's vibe?
That's a really interesting question. And my first career was actually in real estate development. So I started in real estate development in 2007 in Vancouver. And my career actually took me to Australia and the UK. And when I was in Australia, I worked for one of the largest real estate developers in the world. And we often did these roadshows where we go across different cities and we would actually put on a real estate specific conference to meet the clients in person. Personally, I did fairly well on both sides. So I would say a third of my clients I've never met in person. I've only spoken to them over emails, and a third of them I've met in person, and a third of them I met in person once and then eventually closed the deal over emails. So for me, back in those days, I think it was a pretty even split. But I can definitely see how some people would feel more comfortable because the properties that I was dealing with was anywhere between $500,000 to up to $3 million.
Wow.
And oftentimes people would just give you a blank check and ask you to fill it out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. But I do think when it's completely online, the closing cycle is longer. However, if you meet somebody in person, I've had people come in just curious what we were doing, walk out with a stack of contracts of properties, multiple properties that they bought for all of their children. So
Wow.
it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. People, I've done business, and I guess it also depends on the person. I have done business deals with people where it's worked online, after a set of emails or a Zoom, but uh, in person, depending on your energy, your character, you're
I
able to
know.
convey characteristics, charisma that is otherwise much more difficult over an email or a phone call. Um, and to be honest with you, it's a lot more fun, in my opinion. It, you
I
know,
agree.
and going back to the online community conversation, it's definitely a lot more fun to build a community in person and have those relationships with people in person versus just having some thread WhatsApp thread full of people, and the conversations themselves are more insightful.
I definitely agree with that. And that's also one of the key reasons why I host different events essentially on a weekly basis.
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this. I'm,
Yeah.
I am starting out trying to build a community of entrepreneurs, startup founders, let's say. I live in a major city. I live in
Hmm.
LA, or I live in New York, Miami. I have never ever done a meetup. I have never ever done any sort of networking event, and I need your help. Get me from point A to Z. How do you start actually building that community?
Where I would start is actually going to a handful of interest specific events first. So, for example, if you're really into tech, what I would recommend is going on either Luma or Meetup to find those kind of events that one would be interested in and seeing how the current events are run. I in addition to the events that I run on a weekly basis, I attend a lot of local events as well. So I can learn what people are doing that I like and what are doing that I don't like so I can avoid doing the same mistakes myself. Because I've actually been to a lot of events where I just feel incredibly welcome. So that I will always make time to go to those events because the host made me feel like I was appreciated, I was seen, and I was heard. So those are the kind of events I see a lot of regulars going to.
What
So
is the sweet spot with that? Like you said, feeling welcome. Is that a consequence of also capping how big the event is?
my biggest event so far has been about 80 people. My sweet spot, I want to say, is between 20 to 30. So I can talk to every single person myself. However, even at 80, it's you have to be more selective. Instead of talking one on one, oftentimes you'll be talking to the whole group or maybe
Got
in a group of 6 to 8.
Yeah.
So you don't really get the one on one appreciation. So, what I like to do is I like to start my event with an icebreaker. So, I help everyone connect to people that they want to connect with. So make sure that there is no awkward moment if I'm not there to talk to them, if they're standing there by themselves. Because there's a lot of introverts at my events. I love it when people comment on my LinkedIn posts after the event saying that, thank you so much, because I normally don't like networking events. I feel so awkward at them, but thank you so much for helping me integrate into a new group of people. So yeah. And one tip is that, let's say you're hosting an event, first time ever. You don't even know who's going to be there. So if you see somebody looking really confused, walking in, checking their phone just by themselves, they're usually there for your meetup. So make sure that you either go acknowledge them yourself, welcome them to the group, or send somebody from your group to go welcome them right away. Otherwise, they feel like it's some people who are so introverted, it takes them a lot of effort to actually bring themselves to go to these kind of events. So whatever you can do to help them feel at home will really assure them, and they will want to come back.
That's awesome. What about the length? So, like, you know, building relationships, it's not something it do it in 5 minutes, right? Like, you know,
Correct.
it takes time to nurture and whatnot. Is there a sweet spot that you've seen when hosting an event? An hour, 2 hours, more than 2 hour, 3 hour. What is that sweet spot in terms of timeline? And how structured do you actually make the event? Is it more of like, loosey goosey, everybody's talking around, or do you have it structured down to the minute?
I do have a book that I like to recommend. A big shout out to Nick Gray, who's also based in Austin now. The 2 Hour Cocktail Party. So
Awesome.
it's a fantastic framework in terms of running a cocktail party, but it doesn't have to be a cocktail party. So a lot of the ideas I've already implemented prior to reading this book, but it definitely helped me step up my event hosting game. So a big part of it is to make sure you always have name tags for people.
Okay.
And it's always best to have an agenda as well. So
Right.
for my events, I usually try to keep them at 2 hours. However, most of my events don't actually end in 2 hours. Sometimes we go for dinner afterwards, and then sometimes
Okay.
it's 3 to 4 hours. It's fantastic because
So you'll leave
people are
that
actually making.
room. You leave a room afterwards. So if people do, maybe some people have to go home, but the people that do want to continue to stay, you leave a little gap there so they can, go into a party, like a after party, but like maybe a dinner after, or maybe an after party. That way they continue to build their relationship.
I do that. I know Nick in the book doesn't like that, but I do that. Yeah.
All right, that's good. In terms of like the biggest benefit that you've seen since moving to Austin, starting these events, what have you seen like in terms of your business, just your ability to find new opportunities? How has community building had an impact? How has it affected your own personal and professional life?
It's been incredible. So, you know, people joke about there's always this one person who knows a guy. I'm that person now. So
Yeah,
people always reach out to me. And then my answer is always like, oh, wait, I know a guy. It's fantastic. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter who it is. I know a guy. I know somebody. If I don't know somebody, I know somebody who knows somebody. It's
yeah.
great. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm like, whatever you need done, I know a guy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, and when you know someone that knows many people, you are so appreciated and needed. And there's so many opportunities that are thrown your way. So that's fantastic. There's something to be said, like, that expression, your is your net worth. I truly believe that more and more as I grow older. The more people you know, the connections that you have, just makes life and business a lot easier.
Very much so. And I just love seeing those in my community connect with one another and grow together. They're always making introductions as well now and helping one another with their businesses, not just my business, but their businesses as well. So it's
Right.
fantastic to see. I love that.
Tell me about the process of running these. I mean, you a woman show here? Do you get help? Are you utilizing or delegating, some of these responsibilities? Because event planning takes a lot of effort, a lot of coordination. So, are you just doing everything yourself, or are you have a team? How does that work?
I actually run multiple teams for my clients and myself. So I've done a lot since COVID. I'm a real estate developer, as you mentioned earlier. I also run businesses for entrepreneurs and influencers. So I also run a lot of different community events, as we've been talking about. So I actually operate multiple teams at once. So I am really great in delegating in terms of what needs to be done. So I do that for all of my clients. I help them identify what is their $10,000 an hour task that they must do. And everything else from the day to day, I delegate out. I even hire, train to make sure that we find the best person to replace my clients so my clients can actually focus on what is the most important.
That's fantastic. I'm a big advocate for that too. If you are spending all your time doing, $20 an hour tasks, that's 1 hour less of time you have focusing on the the picture, that thing at the end of the tunnel that you're to. I was talking to my marketing director the other day, and she, sometimes she sends me reports, statistics related to our business. At Delegate, we provide offshoring solutions. We provide dedicated virtual assistants and offshore talent for businesses. And so, in my business vertical, I'm always looking at what other businesses are doing and how they're operating, how they're hiring. A really interesting statistic came up in a conversation. Did you know that 80% of businesses in the United States, small businesses that is, are have employees, solopreneurs?
Not
It's
surprised.
it's insane. But and then
Yeah,
I'm not surprised when you hear that most businesses fail within a
that's
few
right.
years in the United States.
That's right. That's right. It's funny you say that because it doesn't matter what industry that I've worked with before, it's always the same problems. The entrepreneurs themselves, they're working in the business, they're not working on the business. So they're literally stuffing envelopes. They're stuffing envelopes themselves instead of outsourcing that kind of lower end job when they should be focusing on much bigger projects.
Yeah, because they're like a few dollars here and there, but they don't see the long term implication. Yeah, you'll save $5 here, $10 here, maybe $300 here, but the time investment
Yeah.
that you're putting into that is keeping you from getting that $10,000, $50,000 opportunity. And a lot of people, they just don't learn that lesson into their professional career, and then they're shocked when they're like, well, my business isn't growing, or everything's stagnating, or I'm so stressed, I can't. I maybe you should try delegating.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they're getting really unhealthy, living a very unhealthy lifestyle because they're working 16 hours a day because they're unable to figure out what they can delegate and what they must do themselves. So I love helping entrepreneur visualize where they're spending their time wrong. So just last week, I helped another entrepreneur recruit someone remotely to help him with all the different, just very repetitive tasks
Yeah,
as it's absolutely necessary because his time was more useful going to different businesses to meeting them in person here in Austin, not to send out, newsletters. That's what a VA can do.
yeah, yeah. Big proponent, and that's the other thing. Like, we now live in a time that where we are constrained by borders. We're not constrained
Hmm.
by just the city that we're living in. I always give this example to other people as we were early on when we were scaling Delegate. Um, I was hiring a marketing director for our company, and I live in New York City. New York City is not the cheapest place in the world,
Hmm.
and there's also a lot of laws that you have to deal with. If I wanted to hire a top-notch marketing director, I would have to go out and I would have to raise venture dollars. I'd have to raise venture dollars to bring in a sales team. I'd have to raise it to bring in a team handle all the different aspects of a business that allow a business to grow. And I said, well, it's, we're in an age now. I can bring someone from overseas that is competent, that has experience working for businesses in my vertical, bring them on, and it's going to cost a fraction of what I would pay someone in New York.
Absolutely. So I've actually been working with remote teams even prior to COVID. It's been fantastic to be able to delegate all the different tasks to my globally distributed team, because oftentimes when I'm still asleep, they're just clocking in. So by the
Right.
time I wake up, the things are already on my desk, ready for the day. I love it.
Talk to me a little bit about like the community building aspect of your operation. So you have these events that you run. What place does your VA, for example, have in that
Yeah.
process? What are they doing? The assets for marketing the event? Are they reaching out to people? What does that look like?
So this is where I'm going to do a big shout out for my assistant Jola. He's been incredible. So he's the one working with ChatGPT to come up with the write-ups that we send up. We send out every Thursday. There's an email newsletter, because I've been getting so many people coming up to me in person requesting to be on a newsletter, which I didn't have, to be kept up to date with all the events that I plan to host across Austin. So now that we have a newsletter, Jola is actually the person to help me draft all of the details. I look at the draft, I approve it, and then he sends it out. And post event, he sends out a follow-up email to everybody, thanking everybody for their attendance. And we actually have started to include a Google Sheet, actually a Google Doc, to have a quick bio of everybody that's attended. And people can edit that document so they can connect further after the event. So the networking doesn't just stop at the event. The
Yeah.
networking continues after. So
Wow.
it's been great. Thank Jola's help, because very, very time consuming. And I spend little time because I need to be working on the strategies with my clients. That's where
Yeah.
my time is best suited at. And also do a lot of partnership negotiations on my clients' behalf for 6 and 7 figure contracts. So that's where I need to be my time, not to figure out, oh, what's this week's newsletter.
Oh,
Fully responsible for that.
I have to change this font around, or I have to edit this thing in Canva. Those things take time. It takes
Yeah,
less time with AI tools, with a lot of tools out there, but it still takes time out of.
absolutely. I love Jola. He's the best.
That's awesome. We love. I'm assuming is Jola's.
Correct. Jola is based in Nigeria. So
That's awesome.
actually, I would say more than half my team right now is based in Nigeria.
Wow.
That kind of just worked out that way, and they've been
Yeah,
incredible.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I would not be in position I am today running Delegate if it wasn't for my overseas team. But it also crosses into not just your professional life. Yes, you're utilizing these folks to grow your business, to nurture these connections. But I've also seen the implications of just having an executive assistant there to help you in your personal life. Because I'm actually a very disorganized person, and having someone, an executive assistant, to kind of keep everything in line, keep your life organized, and keep you sane. I mean, it's worth its weight in gold. Like seriously, it is a game changer to have someone just to organize some things in your life, your calendar, your events, important dates, birthdays. I can't tell you how many birthdays I've missed in the past before I had my own executive assistant, just because I forgot to put it on the
Yeah, Blendi, the first hire I do for every single client is an executive assistant. So that is always the first person I look to replace. Because if they don't have an executive assistant, they are the assistant. So
calendar.
my entrepreneurs, first thing, because I guarantee you they're doing a lot of unnecessary administrative work. So to be honest, now I don't check any of my email inboxes. Since I work with multiple clients, I have multiple inboxes. I don't check those. And even my LinkedIn, Jola is the one living on my LinkedIn,
Fantastic.
even
That's
my
awesome.
Instagram.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have friends that they'll like and comment, or they'll DM me on Instagram, and these are like my very very good friends. They'll meet me on Instagram, say like one of the marketing assistants will reply and ask me something that's like an inside joke or inside question, and my marketing assistant won't know how to answer that, and she'll be like, "Oh, this question," and then I would go to my friend and be like, "Dude, you realize that like I'm very rarely looking at the DMs in this. It's my assistant." He was like, "Dude, you should have told me that before. Like, what if we had a what if?" I'm like, "That's why you message me directly. DM me directly for anything private in nature."
Oh, I know exactly how it works. Yeah, all my friends that only send me a WhatsApp. WhatsApp is my only private way of
Yeah,
communication. My
yeah,
team has access to everything else, which, I'm like, thank you so much for managing my multiple inboxes because I can't be living in my inboxes.
yeah. Well, 100%. Um, one last question I have. Let's say you're trying to build a community. One of the things that people might think when they're planning events, when they're trying to expand their network, is like, "Oh, I'm gonna need like a lot of money to plan these events. I'm gonna need food. I'm gonna need drinks." I mean, we went to this All In Summit. That wasn't a cheap conference, right?
Right?
So, what do you say to people that, they're just starting out, maybe they don't have a crazy big budget? Um, where do you start in terms of financing of this?
Yeah, so I actually do not provide any free food and drinks for any of my events. So, unlike a lot of the other events, so the people who come to my events are genuinely there seeking connections.
Yeah,
Because there is a lot of different events here in Austin where I see the same people who go to these events just to eat and drink. So I don't want I'm specifically positioning my events building deep and meaningful connections. People really need to make an effort to be at my event. And also, there's nothing for free for them there except for making genuine connections. So the kind of people I attract for my events are very specific. They're there to meet like-minded people and make like-minded friends. So yeah,
awesome.
I don't have any free stuff at the events.
That's good. It
Yeah,
means you don't have any, as JCal likes to say, no grifters in the room, right? Like people just trying to get a free ride. Although
pretty much.
you should probably at the next event tell JCal that there's gonna be some
Sponsor.
freebies.
Yeah, I should
Well,
get JCal to sponsor my next event, which is
he's
coming up November 20th with JCal.
there. You go. Awesome. Where Last thing, where can people find you online? Connect with you. Where When a lot of these events come up, where can they find more information if they're located in Austin?
Yeah, so LinkedIn and Instagram, Jola keeps them up to date. So he posts about all my events on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. If you do want to join the newsletter, just, I guess, shoot me a DM.
Fantastic. Are you on X as well?
I am, but not super active.
LinkedIn
Jola's
is the
also
place to
managing
be.
that. Yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Alice, I really appreciate you coming onto the pod. I love we have a shared love of delegation. The fact that you are into community building, it's amazing. I think it is very much in this day and age, this technological age. I think people need to be going and meeting other people in person, building genuine connection, and we appreciate you doing that. So thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you, Blendi. I think the thing I like to add, if it wasn't for delegation, I wouldn't have the time to train martial arts 6 days a week. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. That's another key aspect. Like you're ended on this note, your sanity, your peace of mind
Mm,
is dependent on how you organize your day and the
yep.
people around you in your organization. You're not going to be able to have peace of mind if you don't delegate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
one last thing. I do have a book recommendation for the audience, Multipliers. So Multipliers is one of my favorite books. I can't remember the author's name, but it's really helped me to bring out 120% of everybody on my team. So I don't know if you've heard of the saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. So the book Multipliers really inspired me. Instead of giving my team that answer, really try to motivate them and guide them to find the answers themselves. So it's a life-changing book. It helped my leadership skills.
Especially if people are always looking to upskill themselves. And I think one of the reasons employees often burn out or they don't like the company they work with or work at is because they don't have those opportunities to grow. They're not incentivized to grow. And so having the ability to solve problems, that's what keeps people really engaged and wanting to work in your organization. Otherwise, they're just what I like to say a task. They're just do this when this happens. Do this when.
That's right. They're not learning. They're not being challenged. They're not actually growing.
Yeah, definitely. Alice, thank you so much. Everyone, go visit Alice on LinkedIn. She has all the information there. I'm definitely, next time I'm in Austin, I know what event I'm going to. So I appreciate meeting you, Alice. And for those watching, thank you for watching another episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.